We can't fix the world alone, but collaborating isn't easy, and systems are allergic to change. So, how do we do it without losing our damn minds?
That is what we're here to find out.
I'm Jeff Walker.
I'm English Sall. Welcome to System Catalyst, the podcast that cracks the code for making the world a better place.
Hey, English.
Hey, Jeff.
How are you?
Doing pretty good. It's kind of a dreary day here, so hoping the sun shines soon.
Can't wait for that. Let me tell you about this great interview I just did with one of my heroes, Ai-jen Poo. And she's president of National Domestic Workers Alliance, or the NDWA. And it really brought back to me my grandfather, who was a labor organizer for the electric workers. And when I was listening to Ai-jen, she was talking about the fact that caregivers and household workers are legally prohibited from joining unions. They and ag workers, back in the old Jim Crow days, Congress passed that law. So it's crazy. I mean, I would definitely join a union if I were a care worker and in homes, etc.
It's such an important topic. You know, what an underrepresented group. Honestly, I couldn't even tell you how many domestic workers there are in the United States. And it's an issue that hits so close to home for everyone. I mean, for us, we've hired household, family assistants or caregivers. And, I know for me as like a working mom, I couldn't do what I do without having someone else, that I trusted be able to look after my children. And it's crazy to me that these people, this group of people doesn't have these rights that I think a lot of us recognize and take for granted.
Yeah, there's 2 million people out there who are these caregivers. And she talks about this is going to be a bigger and bigger population and more important as we all age and we all need more assistance. There's going to be, a growing population of people that we're talking about here.
Yes.
And Ai-jen uses the powers of movement building, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela style to help bring them together. So let's take a listen. Here's Ai-jen. Tell me about, the early days of your interest in social justice. I know your family was really into it and interested as well. And they were immigrants to the U.S., right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about, how you kind of developed that passion and sense. Was it from them or others?
For sure. Both of my parents are leaders in their own right. They both grew up working class, working poor in Taiwan during a military dictatorship and came to the U.S. to further their education and to really pursue their dreams. And my father is a scientist who's a neuroscientist, and my mother is an oncologist, recently retired. My father spent his life studying the brain, which is this place of the unknown. And I think that he brings a spirit of curiosity to the human condition and a real kind of a realism to it as well. And then my mother, she's probably the most compassionate person I know, empathetic. And one of the things that she really worked on developing was immunotherapy as a treatment for cancer, which, unlike radiation and chemotherapy, which attacks the toxic cancer cells and everything else, immunotherapy equips your healthy cells to essentially stave off the growth of toxicity within us. And I love the idea of immunotherapy in our culture. How are we equipping what is good and what is healthy within us, investing in that, leaning into that, strengthening that? And so I think they both brought values, but I think just watching them in their work and pursuing their passions to make the world a better, healthier place has also taught me a lot in terms of my own advocacy.
So you then went to college and then came out and you started going, I'm just going to do this. Or how did that evolve? What is the decision kind of looking at your parents and how amazing they are and what you individually could do?
It was never so intentional or planned. When I moved to New York for college, I wanted to get involved in the community, in the Asian immigrant community, because it, was sense of home that I've always been searching for. And in understanding and getting to know the community in New York, I started to listen to the women in the community. I was a volunteer for a domestic violence hotline in the Asian immigrant community where women could call 24 hours a day and get access to resources, to support. And because my grandparents played a really significant role in raising me, I spoke Mandarin, so I was able to be a bilingual hotline volunteer. And listening to the experiences of women who are working incredibly hard, bringing courage, tenacity, determination to taking care of their kids, keeping themselves and their kids safe, and making ends meet, going to work every day, paying the bills, doing everything in their power to be good moms, and still not able to make it work, not able to pay the bills, not able to put enough food on the table, not able to offer the things that their kids deserve. And the question of how it could be that so many immigrant women in our community are working so hard and doing everything right and still not able to catch a break. How could it be that we have a system that fails so many people so systematically? And so that is the kind of question that I've chased from those days, but I really chased them through following the women and wanting to bring women together to build community, to build power, to build sense of agency, that we could do something about these systems that shape our lives. And I don't think it was all that, intentional. I wasn't like, we're going to change any systems that where then this is a system problem, but more just trusting that if we bring people together, everyday people, to address the concerns and the problems and the challenges from a place of possibility and hope and courage, that solutions are possible.
At some point, I think you said it was late 90s, started focusing on the domestic workers.
Yep.
And you decided to pick that segment because there's a lot of caregivers out there. But why that segment in particular? And define what a domestic worker is for us.
Sure. Well, domestic workers are the workers, the mostly women workers who work inside of our homes, providing the caregiving and cleaning services that help our lives maintain order or make it possible for us to go out and work every day, knowing that our loved ones, in most cases, the most important aspects of our lives, right? Our parents, our children, our homes are taken care of and in good hands. So it's work that is absolutely essential, and yet some of the most insecure and undervalued work in our entire economy. We still refer to it as help as opposed to a dignified profession, which it is for millions upon millions of people in our world. And so I think in some ways, domestic workers really get to the heart of these systems, because they work every day, going to work, coming to our homes, caring for the most important aspects of our lives, and yet don't earn enough to care for their own families and pay their own rent. And if we could transform that equation, that system failure, so much could be possible. The genius talent that goes into caregiving that is so underestimated. What if we actually put that at the center of how we value things in the society and in our economy? What might be possible then?
Yes. And a large percentage are immigrants too. Is that right?
Yes. A third of all care workers, so child care, aging and disability care, are foreign born. And a higher percentage of domestic workers even. So almost 40%
Well,
are immigrants.
and it seems like a portion of our economy that's been hidden, right? I mean, I remember there was a whole period of time where people were finally reporting in their income taxes, household worker income, paid, like own that there's somebody there.
That's right.
So half of it is getting us to talk about and own that there are these people we trust.
That's right.
That we're not spending the time to support.
No, that's right. It's almost like this metaphor of the tip of the iceberg where you kind of see that tip, but then you can it forces you to imagine that underneath the waterline, there's this whole mountain of ice, lots going on. And, the domestic workers have been working under the waterline of our economy forever. And there's so much activity that happens. And all we see is the tip of the iceberg, but really we must actually see all that's below if we are to create a sustainable future.
Ai-jen founded the Domestic Workers Alliance, or the NDWA, in 2007. It now has 7 local chapters and works with 70 affiliate organizations around the country. But, as with all big movements, it started out with a small local effort.
It wasn't just me. It was, there was kind of a generation of us domestic workers and organizers in big cities in the 90s who started to come together in church basements and immigrant community centers. And it was kind of like, if you think about domestic work, it is quite isolated. You have usually one person per workplace, and the workplaces are hidden. There's no signs on the doors. You could walk into any apartment building and not know which homes are also workplaces. So it's kind of millions of unmarked, isolated workplaces. And to be able to break out of the isolation of that work and find community with other domestic workers who know your experience and can relate and create a water cooler in an industry where one would never exist, experience. And that's what we started to do in New York, in LA, Seattle, Washington, some of these cities. We started to come together. And in 2007, we came together nationally across these cities, kind of broke out of the isolation of the local work and had our first national meeting. And there were 50 of us, domestic workers and organizers. And the energy and the sense of possibility and potential of having a national voice for this isolated workforce was so exciting to us. We decided right then and there we were going to launch a national organization. And here we are almost 17 years later. And we have a community of almost 400,000 domestic workers nationally in all 50 states, 74 local affiliates and chapters. We get up every day and assert the dignity of this work and fight for it to be valued and compensated and protected because it deserves nothing less.
So part of what we talk about being a system catalyst is, this local action, but a network support. That you're not trying to bring your ego in to tell everybody what to do, but you're trying to catalyze them to work together in a more effective and efficient way. I know we talked to somebody else who was Mark Solomon, who was one of the co-founders of the marriage equality movement. And they found working state by state was more effective for them until they had enough states where then it became a federal, initiative that the Supreme Court signed off on. How are you thinking about that? That I know you've gotten, last I heard, 10 states, coming up with a Bill of Rights. I know you're meeting with the Secretary of Labor soon to talk about a sample employment agreement and some other things. So talk about this local, city, state and federal, and kind of how are you thinking about it?
There's this concept that I really like, what we call modeling power. The idea is that you can create an alternative to the status quo, even if it's a small model. But the power of it is that it proves that another way is possible. So it expands the realm of what's possible just by proving that another way can exist. I think what states and cities offer us is the potential for building models that are run and supported by the government, but ultimately need to be scaled at a federal level. Most big sweeping policies started as a local or a state level model. And then you learn, you collect data, you learn what works. And where we are is the first domestic worker bill of rights was passed in New York State in 2010. Here we are in 2023, and 10 states and 4 cities have passed legislation, and they have each bill is a little bit different. The consistency is that we are both ending the exclusion of domestic workers that has existed in our labor laws since labor laws were first put into place. And we are trying to establish as many new rights and protections as possible so that these jobs have a floor and a baseline to be able to become good jobs. And what we've done is taken some of the learnings about what works and what's needed and the impact on the lives of workers and put that into a national domestic worker bill of rights that was first introduced in 2019 by then U.S. Senator, now Vice President Kamala Harris and Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. Federal level change takes time. We know it's possible because the movement is able to mark these milestones along the way, and we're able to create these building blocks along the way.
What's your next state or two?
New Jersey is next. There's an active, vibrant campaign in the state of New Jersey to pass a domestic worker bill of rights. It's really exciting.
Impressive. But of course, none of these bills would exist without all the domestic workers who use their precious free time to stand up for themselves and others like them. So we asked Ai-jen to tell us about one of them.
There is a woman, Susie Rivera, who is a home care worker in New Braunfels, Texas. And she's been a direct care worker caring for older adults since she was 19 years old. And she's, I believe, in her 50s now. And before the pandemic, she worked on average 110 hours a week. And part of the reason why is because in that part of Texas, to go from one client to another takes time. And so she has multiple clients that she cares for. She really sees this work as her calling. And having done it for as many years as she has, she earns about $12 an hour, which is $3 to $4 more than her colleagues who are newer to the industry. She also has a wife who is immune compromised. And so during the pandemic, when the shutdown happened, she had to make really difficult choices around safety and her clients who needed her and her own family. And this was in the early days when everything shut down. She knew her clients were not going to have the medication, the food, the human connection that they needed if she didn't show up. And so she continued to work, and I think her hours were reduced to about 80 a week. And she kept seeing her clients. She was her client's only lifeline during the pandemic. And I think she saved lives. And not only that, but for her coworkers who lost their jobs and income, she started to deliver food because she was still working to her other colleagues. And then when NDWA launched our cash assistance program, she was a leader in helping to make sure that all of the home care workers and domestic workers in her community knew that they had access to emergency cash assistance through our organization. And she is a part of the Texas Coalition for Domestic Workers. And she had the opportunity to be a part of our campaign at the federal level in the context of President Biden's economic agenda. And we didn't stop. Susie was a part of a national care worker summit that we organized in April, where she was able to be a part of the president signing the first and most sweeping executive order on care in the history of the country directing every single federal agency to do what was in its power to improve access to care for families and to improve the quality of jobs for workers like Susie.
It's great. Great story. And it's great that she raised her hand and wanted to do more than just her own work, helping others. And then, there's a Giving Tuesday, Asha Curran talks about hand raisers and that they're more effective in creating movements than finding somebody that you're going to work on this state and you're going to work on this issue, but waiting for those people to raise their hand saying, no, I want to work on that, and looking for those. And she sounds like a great hand raiser.
Oh, we have this workforce is full of hand raisers. We have so many volunteers who knock doors to register voters, to make sure people know when election days are, to make sure that they have their voices heard and their votes counted. We have workers who are volunteering to share their stories, writing op-eds about their stories so more people understand what it's like to do care work every day and what it's like to try to survive on $12 an hour if you have your own family. There's just so many hand raisers. There's 1,000 ways that women like Susie are powering change in our communities every day. And it goes from taking care of the people we love to changing laws in state legislatures. It's quite a range. The thing about stories is that they're tapping into an emotional truth. There's what's factually true and there's what's emotionally true. And both truths have a profound impact on our behaviors, on the way that we make meaning, the decisions that we make. And I think oftentimes in this kind of systems and social change world where we lean heavily into what's factually true and we make our arguments and we have our data and we have our research and analysis. And at the end of the day, I think we cannot underestimate the power of the emotional truth to drive change in behaviors, in norms, in culture. And that is what storytelling helps us tap into is our emotional lives. And until we can connect to people at scale at an emotional level, it will be very hard to catalyze anything close to systems change because at the end of the day, systems are embodied by humans.
You wrote a book called The Age of Dignity, and you also created another organization called Caring Across Generations. And you've expanded, at least my eyes, as to creating this viewpoint of the care economy. And one of the things I kept saying is, everybody deserves someone to care for them across the country.
That's right.
Everybody, one person. Could be your mother, your sister, your next door neighbor, your caregiver, whatever that might be. And we don't have that.
That's right.
46% of adults over 65 are lonely. And there's a great company called Devoted Health that I work with. But you can't join that organization unless you believe in love, unless you treat others as if they're a member of your family.
Mm-hmm.
And so that changed everything because they started finding out who the caregivers were.
Mm-hmm.
And they started saying, we need to talk to the caregiver as well so we can make sure your meds are all right and you make sure that you're, not lonely, and connected. If there are caregivers at all, or let's go find some. So I think it is kind of related and integrated into everything you've been working on, this larger care question.
Yeah. Anyone who's paying attention can see that we have a growing aging population in this country. Every single day, 10,000 of us turn 65 and 10,000 of us are born. And then because of advances in technology and in medicine, we're living longer. So we've essentially added an entire generation onto our lifespan since our safety net was first put into place. But we haven't adapted any of our systems or our policies or our culture to support quality of life for a longer lifespan. And so on both ends of the generational spectrum, there's increased amounts of pressure to care for people that we love. And on the childcare front, we have a situation where 70% of young children in the US are growing up in households where all the adults have to work outside of the home in order to make ends meet. And we have a situation where 1 in 4 moms has to return to work within 2 weeks of giving birth because we don't have a federally mandated paid family and medical leave program. So there's all of our human need, our universal human need to take care of our loved ones from birth to death through disability has not changed. The demand, the scope, and the scale of the need has changed because of longevity, because of modern life. And we have not changed our systems, our policies. Social scientist Jessica Calarco says it kind of crisply. She says, other countries have a social safety net. The US has women. And that, in a nutshell, describes how we've gotten to where we are now, but it is not sustainable. And I see this kind of growing older population as a huge opportunity for us to take a step back. And if that wasn't enough, we had a pandemic to help underscore the point that this is a generational opportunity to establish the kind of care systems and infrastructures that can support us to take care of the people that we love in this next era. And I think that is the movement that you feel, the energy of the moms who are demanding change, the dads, the millennial dads who are demanding paid paternity leave. Like, there's all this new momentum that exists because we're all feeling the pressures of care, and we all instinctively recognize that this is no longer about a personal failure. It is actually a system failure. We are finally fighting for the care we deserve in this country, and it feels exciting. It's energizing to me. I think it has the potential to unlock generational change.
That's it for today's show. Please don't forget to subscribe to System Catalyst so you don't miss out on the new episodes. Also, do us a huge favor by rating our podcast and leaving us a review. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you all in the next episode. Before we go, I'd like to thank our producers at Human Group Media. We'd also like to thank our incredible network of partners who are supporting our mission: the Skoll Foundation, the Aspen Institute, Echoing Green, DRK Foundation, Maverick Collective, Virgin Unite, Charlize Theron Africa Outreach Project, Boldly Go Philanthropy, Synergos, Forward Global, Nexus, and New Profit. If you're interested in becoming a System Catalyst and would like to learn more about our partners, please visit systemcatalyst.com.